Hello and welcome to New Europe Studios, where you can watch us make the news. I'm Sean Dunn. Today it is a distinct privilege for me to be interviewing a fellow U.S. Air Force veteran. Brandon Bryant is a former drone operator. He's been featured in Der Spiegel, CNN, GQ, Vice, NBC, The Guardian, about every major reporting agency in the Western world. And he's here in Brussels for a conference called Drone Warfare and Global Governance, Where to Go From Here. We'll be having a screening of a documentary made by Miss Tonya Shea called Drone, and Brandon is featured in that documentary. Now, Brandon, what encouraged you to speak out against drone warfare?
Pretty much when I was in the military, I had a lot of faith that things were going right, but I kept seeing things go wrong. And my mother would always tell me things like somebody needs to stand up for what is right, or always stand up for what is right. And she'd always been encouraging to me. In fact, that's how she raised me. And when people started asking a lot of questions and they found out that I was a former drone operator and I was public about my experiences, they came to me and were like, could you answer these questions? And I was like, everyone deserves answers. So I was sick and tired of hearing my government lie to their allies and lie to its own people, and I decided to be the one to speak the truth as far as that goes.
I wanted to ask you about something that really bothered me a lot in the military and what inspired me to try to get into media, is the use of language that exists in the United States surrounding these issues. Do you have any sort of insight into that?
Well, are you talking about the language used as far as with the people or with the technology itself?
Well, both. You know, for the technology, it's very confusing for someone that isn't in the military and directly exposed to it. But also, if you read about it in the media or official statements, you know, they use terms like, I don't know, enemy combatant and that sort of thing. And it kind of makes statistical units out of people.
Correct. Yeah, that always bothered me. Like, everyone was a ma'am, a military-aged male. Right. Everyone was either a crow or a raven or a ma'am, which crows and ravens are women and children, which is, to me, being a fan of mythology, is kind of ironic because crows and ravens are associated with death in various mythologies around the world. And as far as that goes, like, it bothered me, that fact that we would see these this many enemy combatants killed, and really they're just people who are old enough to probably pick up a rifle that were just killed. And people in America think that's okay. They don't view these people as people. They're just a statistic, a number, something to be blown to the side. But they're human beings. They live lives. They have friends and families and drink tea and do all sorts of things that everyone else does, but no one really wants to think about that. So just putting them as a statistic or a terminology is doing discredit to them as people.
Right, and I think that's part of the reason why in the West, people feel so disconnected from it, and maybe it doesn't have the sort of impact that it should when people read an article about a targeted killing somewhere, you know.
I find it actually pretty interesting that the very conservative Christians are the ones who, if people aren't Christian, then they don't care about them.
Right.
Like, that's the majority of people I've run into in the U.S. who are like, well, they don't care. Are they Christian? No. Well, then I don't care about them. Like, which is totally against Christian. It's like opposite of what Christianity should have been, you know.
Right. And also for me personally, a lot of times when I talk to not only Americans, but especially in the U.S. about having been in the military, you know, a lot of people, we have kind of this strange reverence for veterans in the U.S. And when you challenge the political structure or the social order, a lot of people, they really kind of shut down. They don't know how to feel about it because we're someone that was supposed to be representing, you know, all that's good, whatever, and suddenly they're seeing the truth from someone that's been connected to it.
Yeah, I think one of that's a very good point, because in America you see all these people that are always like, I support our troops, like, yay America, support our troops, yellow ribbon on the back of your car, you know?
Yeah.
But they don't do anything about it. They just say it. It's just words that come out of their mouth. It doesn't mean anything to them.
Right.
So if they support the troops, then why are they sending troops to die overseas? We should, do they really know why we're over there? Do they really know what the purpose really is? Do they support us being invaders of another country? I mean, you have to look at it from our historical standpoint. Like, we would have done the same thing had anyone invaded our country. We did do the same thing when we declared our independence. We fought back.
Right.
And these guys are doing no different than what we have done in our past. And so we actually do have that connection to these people over there, but it's a negative connection. Like, we have become the bad guys, and the people that say I support the troops and don't do anything about it and let our troops die overseas don't really support our troops. They're just giving
lip service.
Lip service. There you go. Lip
Right,
service to it.
And so actually, I mean, what can people do? Well, this conference was primarily organized using social media, something that people weren't able to do even 10 years ago. So, I mean, if people engage actively and democratically in their communities and actually are willing to talk about these sorts of things, you know, rather than accept everything that's told to them, I feel that's how we can change the state of politics and the, you know, military operations. Do you agree?
I wholeheartedly agree with that. If we challenge everything that we know, we can come to better conclusions. And even when we come to those conclusions, if we challenge those conclusions, we can refine them and get better at them. And we can't just accept things as they are. Like, that's one of the biggest things that people always argue against me for, is like, that's just the way that the world works. Well, I feel like a stupid, naive optimist or ideologist when I think, well, that's not the way that it should work, and I will make it work better. Like, but that was just how I was raised. So I can't accept things as they are if they're not as good as they could be.
So can you tell us a little bit about what the life of a drone operator is like?
The life of a drone operator was very monotonous and boring. You're working 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week, 2 days off between work weeks. If you have any sort of mission continuity, you're flying the same mission over and over again. So you leave the shift and you come back and you go to the same mission, and you're like, well, what has happened in the last 12 hours? And they'll tell you. If anything's changed or different or something's going on, but you don't have like all the information. You just know that, well, this guy in this house is a bad guy. You're watching for people to leave. You're waiting for a car to leave, and you're going to follow it. They don't tell you anything else. They don't tell you who you're following or why, or just that it's a bad guy and you should trust them. It's dark. It sucks. You're sitting there with the same person for hours. they won't let you read or do anything fun. You have to stare at the screen. But I would always bring a book or something in.
Right.
At one point, I was bringing my Game Boy in.
Okay.
But it was different in the fact that you would always see the same people flying. And we had enough people that shouldn't have happened. So all the leadership in our squadron did the minimum amount of flying that they had to. And they were getting paid to do it. They were getting flight extra pay, so they were getting flight pay and stuff. And those of us, young airmen, who didn't have a flying AFSC, we weren't getting flight pay. So these guys were flying maybe once or twice a month and getting that extra 30-day, maintaining that flight pay when we were doing all the work and we weren't getting anything for it.
Right. Do you find that it maybe starts to numb people to what's being done, or is that not true?
I would say that you were pretty spot on with that. It really does numb people. Like, people just get bored. They don't care.
Right.
They want to shoot people because it's different. It gives action and suspense, and you don't know what's going on. Like, is the shot gonna make it? Is the laser gonna track the target, or is it what's gonna happen? Are you gonna kill everyone, or are you just gonna wound them? Like, and people get excited about that. But all the monotony for me just made me question more. And people would always tell me to shut up, and oh, you're being too negative, because I was like, what we're doing is wrong. It's not right. Well, you're being too negative. Shut up and just do your job. And it was. So I did. I mean, I did my job. I did it really, really good. Just so that if I ever had anything that I needed to stand up on, I would at least have that. I would have, like, I served my country honorably, and I feel terrible about it.
Right. That's not something that someone should feel guilty about. They should be proud of doing it.
Yeah.
And so, was it over time that you came to object and put things together, or was it instant, immediate? Because the degree of separation between the violence and what you were doing day in, day out, just the old order, it's so great. So, like you said, it kind of numbs people. We
actually were talking about this earlier. Have you ever read David Grossman's On Killing?
I haven't.
It's amazing. It actually really helped me figure out, like, what was going on in my own brain during it. And at one point he talks about, like, the intimacy of killing, how being in close contact with someone, being able to look them in the eye, is extremely intimate as far as killing goes. And then he goes through, like, small arms fire, then long range small arms fire, to artillery, to aircraft bombing, and he says that the greater in intimacy that you get, the easier it is to disassociate yourself with it. Like, the bombings over Berlin, when those were happening in World War II, they were just targets. Even though there were people in those buildings and everything, they were just targets. Pilots didn't really have to think about it, which gives, when someone actually does challenge and think about that, it could traumatize a person. Like, there's that psychological traumatization. Well, for us, we're sitting on the other side of the world, but we're watching daily lives of people. So you're watching them go to the market. You're watching them play with their kids. You're watching them hang laundry. You're watching them have sex on the rooftop. You're watching them do whatever it is that they do in their daily lives. You've seen it. And so there's this intimacy of, like, you see these people as who they are, of not like the ragheads that the drill sergeants want you to believe, that you're going and killing ragheads and so, or whatever derogatory term that they want to use. Like, you see people, and, like, no one wants to question that, because if they took an actual look at that, they would see that the entire foundation of what the military has been built on is a lie.
Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Brandon, for being with us. It's a great honor, and your message, it's a very important one for everyone to hear. And if you're watching this, please share it on Facebook, like it, tell your friends, whatever. This message needs to be gotten out, because this is how we, as normal people, can affect a real change in politics. Thank you very much. I'm Sean Dunn at New Europe Studios on Place Rodin in Brussels, where you can watch us make the news.